Hello, viewers. A lovely afternoon. Well, one of the core mandates of the social contract theory places a responsibility on government to provide the basic social services. This, among others, is, of course, healthcare, education, security, transportation, amongst other core values that the human being needs to thrive. Well, this afternoon, I'm joined by a panel of distinguished young people to evaluate the performance of our government in terms of delivering the services that Ugandans need. And to discuss this with me is a panel of distinguished young people that is I now introduce to you, and in no particular order. Next to myself is the Secretary for Publicity of the National Youth Council of Uganda, Mr. Gady Epitu. Many thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Yes. How is Moroto?
Moroto is good. Yeah.
Okay, I like the shirt. It is so African.
Yeah, sure. Because we are trying to, bring
Uplift.
the regional integration of the East African community.
Very interesting.
So you have to, blend in.
Very
the
interesting.
situation.
Yeah, Pan-Africanism.
Yeah.
Next to Gady is a comrade of mine, my former classmate, Mr. Mwanje Samuel, who is a software engineer by profession, but also is a youth activist. Ndugu Mwanje, many thanks for being here.
Thank you, Moses.
Yes.
I am glad to be here to share views with the young people, but particularly Uganda at large.
Wow, very interesting. Next to Mwanje is Mr. Arok James Isaiah, who is a fourth-year student of journalism at Mackline University, but also is a MasterCard Foundation scholar. How do you feel being here, sir?
Well, a very good afternoon to you, viewers. It's always a privilege to have an opportunity to share perspective with young people, because that is the way forward. We don't deliberate on such issues, and then it's going to be very hard for us to be able to dissect and move forward as a country and as a continent at large.
Wow, very interesting. Well, there's a fourth panelist, a lady, who shall be expecting her to join us any time from now. But for now, let the gentleman just first, lay the foundation. Gady, let me start with you. At least you serve in a government institution. How would you rate government's performance? And to be fair, we shall just evaluate from 2021 up to date. How would you evaluate government's performance in terms of service delivery?
Okay, thank you so much, Kidega Moses. Earlier on, Kidega did not introduce me well. Didn't mention my other name. I'm Epitu Gady. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
And now, when we start evaluating government performance from 2021, we realized that surely we might not get the real right figures to evaluate them, because COVID at one point came and disorganized the system a little bit. And so most of the services were really broken down, and I can't really say that government failed, but they tried. But generally, government has done most of the work, though it has not done to the fullest. I cannot say they have done to the fullest 100%. They have not done 100% because you realize there are issues of financial constraints in the country. You recently got to know when the Minister of Finance came out clearly and said the country is broke. The country is broke at large. So that one really clearly signifies that the service delivery to the local consumer, to the local person down in the village, because basically when the government is giving service delivery, it is not to benefit someone already up their side, but wanting to make the service reach that local person who cannot move from the village to to a big town to look for services. As a service reach them, have the roads reach them, is the infrastructure development reaching them, is electricity reaching them. So you find most of these things are really not really to 100%. The roads have been worked on, but not to 100% completion. I can give an example of Karamoja, because there are some places that are so impassable. I can still, because I'm from Karamoja, so I can be basing on Karamoja sub-region. We look at the issue of insecurity. Government really should stand up and try as much as possible to bring peace into the sub-region. A small sub-region that is really failing government to bring peace. So you realize that they are trying, but it is not 100% done. And of course, there are other challenges that are in it when you're trying to do something. Even the roads accessibility of some areas in Karamoja sub-region are not okay, and it cuts across other parts of the country. Yeah, so and also you realize the government also does some things and call in NGOs because government cannot fund everything in the country. So it brings about the support of NGOs to help government. So the performance of government for the past, from 2021 to this year, has not really been 100%. I can say it is really at around 60%.
60%.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Mwanje, let's put government on the weighing scale. Gady, you've had him. COVID-19 interrupted, but of course, like you said, government, said that they are incapacitated in terms of resources. Let's just hear from you. How would you evaluate the NRM government?
Thank you, Moses. To me, I think it is fair enough to evaluate government if at all we are certain that government institutions are independent enough to be evaluated.
Okay.
Because it becomes a dilemma if the independency of these institutions that are supposed to give us services are not independent enough, and then we evaluate them anyway for that matter. So the issue is that as much as there is something done, because there is lack of independence of these institutions, then we have seen a lot failing. That is my first submission, that a lot is failing because there is lack of independence of these institutions. So we have the COVID-19 breaking in, we have the UNRWA complaining. Of late, the executive director of UNRWA was on media complaining that every member of parliament wants a road to be done, but there is no money. But the first question is, now where is the money that has been provided? Because there is money that is being provided. Every financial year budget is being released. But because the institutions are not independent enough to come up with the accountability to a layman citizen like me to understand, then I think it's even unfair if we are to evaluate them in terms of giving us services, because they are not even independent enough. So from a bigger perspective, service delivery fails at the moment there is no accountability. That is where the failing point of it starts from. Because they are not even independent, then they cannot even offer the exact service. Because it would have been fair enough to evaluate someone who I gave 10 million, for example, and they used 10 million. So now I am evaluating the service if it was worthy for the 10 million. But then you realize that in our government today, a budget is released of 5 billion, for instance, something is done for worth 1 billion. So it becomes unfair to evaluate such a thing. To me, as someone who is an engineer, that is not mathematical enough. Because you are not even giving me what is proportionate in what I gave you. So on a large scale, I think government has done something. That one we can't underrate, because to come to studio today I had to pass through a road. So there is something. But because of the lack of independency and lack of accountability in our government today, a lot is being jeopardized on. So that should be the first checking balance, the issue of independency and accountability from these institutions. Then I think it gives us a leveled ground of now evaluating, is this service now, better enough? Can we even negotiate for more? But you realize that we can't even have negotiating power because there is no independence of these institutions. There is really no independence.
Isaiah, let me come to you. Lack of independence, lack of accountability, the natural hazards like COVID-19. What is your own take? How do you evaluate government for the past 1 or 2 years?
Government has been in position to put in most of the infrastructure that is geared toward helping the citizenry. However, where we have not seen the impact is that evaluation perspective. Look at the recent the presidential initiative on Operation Wealth Creation. It had quite some very good intention, and that was done to ensure that the young people and those that have businesses that are related are able to get some loans or some resources that can be able to support the initiative that they are doing. Unfortunately, that was done without what we would call the stakeholder engagement to ensure that the people to whom these funds are directed to do understand what these resources are going to be in for, and then to give them also the opportunity, the platform to let's say come up with some of the solutions that they could, because some of issues that have been reported with the SACCOs is that people do not really understand what these funds have been for. Some actually mistook them for.
Are you speaking about the Parish development model?
Absolutely.
For many others.
For the Emyoga that is gone. For the
all
Emyoga
those
that
things.
is gone. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So you realize that people get the loan and then divert it into other things. I was listening to the deputy RDC of Koboko. He came up with an allegation that youth have actually in the past been getting some of this loan to go and get second wives or third wives and stuff. So you get to understand that the intention is good, but then they have not understood what this money is for. Some actually thought that this money was put in there as a token of appreciation by the government, that they have already what? They voted the government, and this was a thank you note. And you realize that it is not. They have not owned these approaches. They have not owned this solution that the government is bringing forth to them. So where the government maybe did not have the calculation right is the aspect of engaging them to see that some of those SACCOs first understand why those funds have been positioned there and how best that they are going to use to ensure that they move forward and get out of the situation of the poverty that people are in. Yes.
All right, Gady, let me just come to you, and I want to pick it up from where Isaiah stopped. He stopped on the aspect of financial inclusion, but above all, economic empowerment. And if you look at Uganda's demographic, the most affected group of people are the young people. You're on the National Youth Council. Let's speak about the ability of government to have an all-inclusive consultative process. In the Youth Council, when you come up with these decisions, how do you consult the young people? Because what he's saying is that there is not so much government consultation, people coming up with certain policies, and therefore there is no ownership from the population. So let's just understand from you, how does government perform its role in terms of having all-inclusive ideas?
Okay, thank you, Kidega. One thing for sure is that government has tried its best to really think about the youth. But then there is a challenge, as you can witness from this year's theme of the Youth Day. It was intergenerational solidarity, creating an age group where people work together, workable ages. So we are trying to bring, youth are lacking at the decision-making processes. We can bring in ideas and we submit to the government. But the person to hear those ideas is the one that is lacking. But if we had the youth at the decision making, then probably we would be on a right track with the youth, and all these services could go direct to the youth. Let's talk about the PDM. You talked about financial inclusion. It is there as one of the pillars of PDM, the implementation. But then we have been chasing wind. We have been chasing wind because we don't have someone there to make a decision for us. So we have been saying, why can they leave the 30% of the finances to the youth? But and yet, when we discuss and we take our voices, at the decision making, the guidelines that come in are not talking about the 30% given to youth. So you find the youth are lacking at the decision making processes. Though we cannot deny government really has thought about youth. They have tried their best. They have done most of their best to think about the youth through most of the NGOs who have come in and supported most of the youth activities in most of the sub-regions in Uganda. Now the challenge also arises whereby the youth don't own most of these activities. The youth in some places don't own the activities. Why? Because they are not, some of them are not sensitized because of the reluctance of our local governments in the country to go and sensitize them on how best can they use this money. So money is given to them and they just stay with it there, do with their own things. Emyoga money, when Emyoga money came, people say this is the Christmas for them.
Bonanza.
Hey, this is the Christmas bonanza for them, and they went and spent the money somewhere buying mattresses. It happened that time when I was still working in the government. Yeah, so you try to go and monitor, and you realize that most of them have used the money in different things out of the intended objectives. And also government also should really align they should go deep into the villages or any trading center and advise the youth on which kind of businesses can they do with the money. Because you cannot tell me you're going up to the border of Kenya from Karamoja sub-region and you expect taxi drivers to be there. Because Myoga was targeting taxi drivers, and if someone is getting money for taxi drivers, ask now, where is a taxi in this rugby area here? It is not there. So government should really go down to the villages, advise people, give them the money and advise them. And this should be the work of the commercial officers in all local governments to try to advise the youth so that the youth can take ownership and also direct the resources to a better, profitable business that is going to develop them.
Wow, very interesting. Samuel, let me come to you. One of the core aspects of service delivery is security. And security is broad-based. It could be human security, but also territorial security. Now, let's just begin with the evaluation. How have you performed in terms of security? Because as we speak, I think last week or the week before, I saw the leader of opposition having a meeting with the chief whip, the government chief whip, and I think the prime minister. And the argument was the missing persons whose whereabouts are not known. Apparently, they're being held incommunicado. No one knows about where they are. We have seen of recent police posts being attacked by unknown gunmen. So how would you, the question of Karamoja, so how would you evaluate government's performance in terms of security to the citizens?
Thank you, Comrade Moses. I think on the issue of security, in 1986, actually way back from 1980, I think that was one of the core reasons the president of this country gave as he was waging war against the Obote government.
Yes.
And indeed they fought. And over the years, in his speeches, he has bragged around the security of this country being worked on, and it's really stable. So as a young man growing up around the 94 there, I used to hear conversations from our guardians bragging around stability in this country. And their stability was, in fact, in terms of security. So, but over the years, things have begun deteriorating. And I think the major reason as to why things have really deteriorated is the politics around the security. And that one, I say it without fear of contradiction, that the security has been mixed with politics. Like you mentioned, the continuous abductions, the continuous attack on police posts around places. These are things that, to me, I think are not failing because we are lacking enough manship in terms of security, or we are lacking enough equipment in terms of security. But I think it is the politics around the security that is happening. Because you see, this country spends its hugest budget on security. on security, and that is on record.
Yeah.
There is also the classified budget. Every time the classified budget is questioned, it is replied as a budget that handles some security matters that may even be classified. They call it even classified security matters. They are not even known to the public, and we are not supposed to know about them. But I think what is happening in terms of security, to me as a person, it is intentional. To me, and I'm saying that's my opinion.
Yes, yes.
It is really intentional. And I think it is intentional because of political aspects. And I think it's a very big failure for this government. Because as much as, because I don't know, I have only had a single party complaining about abductions. Like, I mean a political party complaining about abductions. The recent statement on police attacks was that that same party is again conniving to attack these police stations. So that's why I say it is simply politics. So I think in terms of security, me as a person, I'm secure. I really have less concerns when it comes to security. The people of Bijambia, have not heard about them. In fact, the people of Bijambia, according to government, we are being sponsored by members of parliament, which is a very great dismay.
Okay, can you walk through, for example, Makere Chikoni, or can you walk through Chimombasa, or can you walk through Katanga at maybe around 1 a.m. in the night, just walking? And
just walking at around 1 a.m. in the
and
night.
you get your home and safely.
Of course, you see, it is not always also good to tempt the devil. so when you ask me that, can I walk there, it really goes down to why am I even walking there? Because even security gets to you as a person. For example, when you go to certain public offices, public places, even if they have askaris around, they have a disclaimer that please protect your property.
Yes.
So security starts from sensitization. Please protect your life. So I need to protect my life. But I am saying that on a large scale, we have not had these cases of someone has been endangered because they were walking at 1 a.m. Such minor issues. Of course, these cannot be, dealt with completely. And I would say around 80%, this has been dealt with. These simple security matters that happen on a day-to-day, the 1 inch security is really happening. But now the bigger question, and what is on the public face, the continuous abductions, because for us we call them abductions. Some people call them a violation of human rights. So these questions, I think, to me, they are supposed to be answered politically. What is happening on the security is supposed to be answered politically. But I think the 1 inch security, to me, is fair in this country. The 1 inch security. Okay,
the 1 inch. I believe we are all 1 inch here.
Exactly.
James, let me come to you, but still on the issue of security.
Yes.
And you're someone who you're pursuing your journalism career. So I have to assume that you do research and you try to find out what is happening, both in the country and outside. So do you think that our security has been undermined by the conflict in DRC Congo? That when we evaluate and say that we are having challenges with our police posts in the country, we are having challenges in Karamoja, we are having challenges with abductions, does it have a correlation, however slight, with what is happening in Goma or in eastern DRC Congo, the ADF and all those militia groups?
Yes, well, the issue of security is quite a very sensitive area, but my take on that on that issue is that society usually tends to take advantage of the situation that is prevailing. Situations of the insecurity that has been that has been trending of recent. Some of the things that are related to the youth, sometimes getting out of the universities, and they do not really have platforms where they're going to showcase what they have studied, issues of unemployment, issues of survival. So what tend to happen is that there are individuals when some of those areas are touched, it becomes a little bit very sensitive. Now we have young people. The recent statistics actually show that young people are the majority within the country, some of whom do not have survival opportunities. Mackline University, I think yearly we have thousands of graduates and other universities around there. So just like any other country, issues to do with security are very always things that are down and have to be looked at critically. You look at United States of America, the media portrays it as as a society that is very perfect in a sense. But some of these issues actually are not brought forth. So you realize that it is something that is global. Look at the issues of the ADF in DRC. So these are situations that are taken advantage of. That when they arise up, people that have diabolic motives tend to use them. My brother here talked of the recent police posts being attacked. Whereas it is political in a way, you realize also there are individuals that tend to take up such opportunities to be able to take it to their own advantage. All of these issues to do with security in most cases are a reflection of citizens not being satisfied in a way. Talk of Karamoja there. Issues to do with cattle rustling is still, though it has been addressed by the government over the years, but it is not yet really to the satisfaction. There are pockets of individuals still that are caught off undertaking the issues to do with taking off cattle, so some of whom actually they know that they don't belong to them. So you realize that it is something that a situation that is that is taken advantage of. And the other issue also with the insecurity that the political situation in the country is also seen as something that is taken advantage of the situation. Look at the political parties. Whereas there is something that may not, at the end of the day, be a government that may not concern the government, it becomes a little bit unclear that where all these issues are coming from. But the issue of security, just like we all know, are things that are global. Every country that you go to is that the privatization of the media. With the postmodernism, where we have social media nowadays that are becoming a mirror of what is happening even in our daily environment. So you realize these things are really very they are taking shape of the entire global situation. But security is something that we have everywhere, and the issues to do with the security not being the insecurities being issues taken up the whole spectrum of things, is that the government should first address some of these grievances of the youth and maybe the entire citizenry not being satisfied with their daily lives.
Thank you very much, Isaiah. Well, viewers, like I had promised you, we shall be joined by a fourth panelist. She's here gladly, and she has appeared like Jesus Christ. That is Isabella Mackline Mukyala, who is a co-founder of It Girls Foundation, but also I know she's a former Guild presidential candidate at MOVES. Isabella, thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
All right, I'll just allow you to settle in as I continue with the gentleman. Gady, let me come to you. On the issue of security still, I know you served as RDC of Kabong district, right?
Yeah, sure.
So now when we evaluate security and insecurity therein, what is the role of all these DSOs that we know? We know that there is the whole security structure that goes to the village level. We would have imagined that this is part of community security. So is this an indictment? Because when we speak about the abductions, we speak about the attacks on police posts, we speak about the issues in Karamoja. Is security playing its role? But also, are these DSOs and ISOs, are they actually relevant anyway?
Thank you very much. You see, the issue of security is so wide.
Yeah.
And the government of Uganda has tried to put in, a lot of support to make security so perfect for us, the wananchi, to build security amidst us. That's why they have put in the ISO's office. That's why you see UPDF is there, police. You see CIDs. You see, a lot of CMI is there. A lot of security agencies around. All that is put in order to, build the security in the country. You're asking about Karamoja. The work of the DSOs and of course with the other security organs to build the security and to improve the security of Karamoja sub-region is something that is they are doing their role as the DSOs by providing intelligence reports to the UPDF. That is their work, is to provide intelligence reports to the UPDF of anything that comes in, of any attack that is within internal within the country, within the district where they are put, where they are situated. That is their work, to provide intelligence reports and try and inform the police and the UPDF that surely there is an issue here, there is a problem here, and also they work with the office of the resident district commissioner, with giving detailed and on-time reports concerning the insecurity bits. Now, what happened in Karamoja? There is DSO's office, then there are GISOs, there are PISOs. The wananchi, the locals of Karamoja, the cattle rustlers. I know Karamoja has porous borders. And you find that the area of Turkana wasn't disarmed, but Karamoja was disarmed. So there is influx of weapons that come into the country from the porous borders. They enter into Karamoja sub-region. So you find that when the guns have entered, even if you provide detailed information, these very locals, the cattle rustlers, start hunting the gisos. So when you're being hunted, of course, you run into hiding. A little bit. You run into hiding because those gisos are not provided with security. Just like the resident district commissioner is provided with at least an escort, the DSO is provided with an escort. You have your escort and at least you're secured. But the gisos in the villages, they stay with other people in the sub-counties. They stay with the locals. So you find these people were being hunted. And that is what is happening. That is what has transferred also to other parts of the country now, where you see police posts being attacked. So we are being, like, security is being hunted. And they are trying their best to provide detailed reports, but they are being hunted.
How about the concern being raised by Samuel that security has been politicized?
I cannot say security has been politicized because UPDF hasn't been politicized. I cannot say, because they work for the people. This is an organ that is for the people, and they help the people do their work. And of course, as a security agent, you work under commands. You work under commands. So when your boss tells you, go and do this, go and secure this place, go and do this, go and put a roadblock here, you work under commands.
What if those commands are unconstitutional and they violate the rights of Ugandans? Do you just take the command?
One thing, Kidega, about security, when you're being trained, you're trained to follow the orders. And of course, you follow the orders of, that is respect. You follow an order that is given to you. And you're trained to be, as vigilant as possible to the other person. That's why you see when they're trained that when someone offends you, and even if I'm carrying a gun and you offend me, I don't have to use that gun on you. I have to put it down.
Yeah, measurable force.
I have to put it down. But of course, we are groomed up in different ways as human beings. There is no way all human beings are going to follow the same way that someone has understood. There are those who take the law into their hands. A human heart is different.
That's true.
There are those that take the law into their hands. When you annoy someone, just like you've seen, when you annoy someone can get a knife and prick you. When it's not allowed. Someone can get a stick and hit you. It's not allowed. It's just around the security. Some of them are not really up to the standard. Even if they are being really talked to, but some of them are not to the standard. It is something that is in them. They can't change it.
More so the LDUs.
Yeah, so it happens when you're disturbed, you fire, you shoot. And of course, out of rage and anger. But later on, you come to your senses, you remember, then of course that always comes in.
Okay.
But I can't say it is politicized, it is not.
Yeah, okay. We shall come back to security later, but let's just bring in Mackline. Mackline, we began off by evaluating what is the government's performance in terms of service delivery. And here we're talking about the healthcare, security, education, the rights of women, maternal health, and all these things. So just your opening statements, how would you evaluate government? How has it performed in the maybe past 2 years?
Thank you so much. My evaluation of the government performance and service delivery is not yet quite there. According to me, it's not yet quite there because of a number of reasons. Yeah, some of them include corruption. There is this stagnant system, and so many other things.
Yeah.
And it's not entirely the government to blame, because at some point the citizens themselves don't have a voice to air out their needs and wants, most especially in rural communities. For example, like in Katakwi district. I'll talk about Katakwi district because I've been there. So I know at least what I'm talking about. Yeah, so these people don't have a voice to air out their needs and wants. And that's one of the reasons why the government has lagged behind on service delivery in some of those districts like that one.
Because you would imagine that Katakwi, that is the home of the vice president.
Yes, it
Isn't
is.
she the woman member of parliament of Katakwi?
Yeah.
So if a district like Katakwi with a vice president has no voice, then me from Ngulu, I don't know who will speak for me.
Yes, like I said, it is because of some of those stagnant systems in those districts, and at some point the citizens are reluctant. Some of them are not aware about the rights they have to get services from the government. They are not educated enough to know that they have a right to government services. Yeah. All
right, fair enough. Ndugu Mwanje.
Yes, sir.
Part of government's role is around education. I am one of those who subscribe to the school of thought that believes that education should be, it shouldn't be a commodity. It should have no price tag attached to it, because like Mandela said, educate an individual and you'd have built a nation, right? So the issue of access to education in Uganda still continues to linger in a balance. One, can we evaluate, for example, the progress of UPE and USE education? But also, in the wake of COVID-19, we saw that the teenage pregnancies and school dropouts really hiked so much. So as we evaluate government's performance, can you speak about the education sector? How would you think government has performed in terms of maybe access to education, both in the rural communities, but also in the urban communities? You know, I saw a disturbing picture sometime back on social media where a government school that I will not mention was charging very exorbitant tuition fees. So, access to education, how do you evaluate government there?
Yeah, thank you, Moses. Before I go to that issue, I would only want to remind the former DC that the president of this country on national media, he said that he knows about the commando group that sent men to kill a boxer here in Kawempe. So he acknowledged that he knows the group and they will deal with the group. I am only saying it to show him that, well, he may not believe that the issue is politicized, but they are the same issues we are talking about. So the president acknowledged that he knows about the commando group.
But the president is the biggest consumer of intelligence in this country.
Which is okay, but the commando group, because you asked him, that is the issue being politicized? Then he said no. And then you told him that do they work on sometimes commands that are not constitutional? And he said a command is a command even if it is not constitutional. Anyway, that's also a question to ring about. But then this group attacked the man at around 1 in the night. So I don't know in this constitution if we provide for also attacking people at around that time. But anyway, let me get to the question.
I wanted to respond to him.
Yeah, sure. Mwanje, just.
I wanted to respond to him.
Okay, it's okay.
We have the security system that you can be, that is for the country, that you should be knowing that is for the country, is UPDF, Uganda People's Defense Forces. Leave alone this personal security, is the SMC, that is State House, that is his personal army. Yeah? Leave alone the PPU, but we have UPDF, that is ours, and that is what I'm talking about.
But
we have the DSOS, that is the intelligence system. We have the police. We have the prisons. The LDUs were removed because they were not really so much into they incorporated UPDF. They took them further for training. So we work around that. But the commandos that you're talking of,
that's the president talked of.
Yes, are directly
from him.
From him. So we don't.
Okay. Maybe we may not dive into that because I don't want to remind him of a Ugandan general who keeps on tweeting very interesting security concerns. But we move to the question of education.
That's why I said you have to be sober.
So the most worrying part around education is really about the price of education. Like, what should it cost for a very humble student from a very poor family, if I should say, to access education? So it is what is worrying. And the president acknowledged the same. He said that he really makes it a cry that the UPE and UCE should be free, but then he will even deal with those that go ahead to charge these people in these UPE and USE schools. But then here is the dilemma, according to me. Here is the magic. You really want to have this education get to this student at a very low cost, or if not at all, at even zero cost. But then you have someone who is supposed to deliver this kind of education to that child who you have not thought about. Because up to now, the biggest number of strikes we have had in this country, they are always from teachers and doctors. But I think the frequency of teachers striking in this country is really huge. They are always striking because of the salaries. They are always striking because of the delay in even those little salaries. But then they are the same people you want to tell that you go in Kanungu district and then provide this education to this student or to this child freely. So that's where the challenge comes in. So if the government is really into the issue of having this education be provided at a very cheaper cost, so that a big number of students can really access this education, then their first priority should be on how to first of all settle the teacher. I mean, let the teacher be settled. Of course, because of our desires, they may not have, like, they may not have all they need, but at least let them have a standardized, salary, but that is also reasonable according to the changing demands in this country. Because the salary is there and it is standard. But then, does it address the standing demands? Of late, I just heard that the head teacher, and I beg to be educated, that the head teacher earns around 370,000 shillings of Uganda.
That is according to the government structures.
That's according to the government structures. I beg to be educated, just in case any of us. But if that is the salary, then let's compare it to the current cost of living that we have in this country. On this very show, I've had you several of discussing the cost of living in this country, topics related to that. So in accordance to the cost of living in this country and the salary this teacher is earning, is it really reasonable enough to tell this teacher that you go in this district and then provide this education? So that's where the challenge comes in. But I think the zeal and the willingness to provide this education freely, at least it is there on writing and verbally by this government. But then the way how it is implemented is where I find the challenging bit of it. So let's have the teacher settled with, so that we also have a point where we can, pin this teacher and we'll be like, no, we settled you around this place. Now, why are you doing this? But also look at what is happening at our greatest university. That is Mackline University. You get the idea. These are things that got us always to peaceful strikes during our times. Things to do with privatizing halls of residence. Because to some of us who come from villages, this is the only place we can find accommodation. I can't go to, I don't want to mention names of the hostels that are really expensive. So you realize that this is what we have. We only have Lumumba. We only have Micho. So if you privatize it and then you want people to start charging it expensive.
You haven't mentioned my Livingstone Hall.
Your Livingstone, then you're chasing us out of Mackline University. So I think government should really look into these policies.
All right, fair enough. Still about policies and education still. James, let me come to you. In the 1980s, the globe was taken up by the structural adjustment programs introduced by World Bank and IMF, and Uganda was not spared. But one of the key tenets or key elements of the structural adjustment programs was privatization, that government should privatize so much of its service delivery. And education somehow took that same route. And when you speak about service delivery in terms of education, you look at the level of privatization of the education system. So many students these days would prefer to go to the private-led institutions. All right, I won't mention names, but the Seta Highs of today, the Chitendes of today, attract so many students for whatever reasons it might be. So do you think that issues around privatization, that we took a policy as a country to privatize so many of these service delivery, do you think it is costing us in the long run? Should we review our education policy and nationalize it and go back to the days where we had the likes of Nanyange, is it Nanyange girls, Toro girls? I know government was, I don't know, what is your take about education?
Yes, when you look at Uganda as a country, and you look at you look at the essential ways of survival, and you look at the income status of individuals or of families, you realize that it's quite costly. And if we are to have, let's say, an education that is all-inclusive, an education that is looking at a child from as far as Karamoja, from as far as Yumbe, from as far as Koboko, Arua, etc., you realize that it is not actually looking at it is inconsiderate of some of such sort of demographics. But again, when you look at all these global forces coming up to bring in the issue of privatization of some of these institutions, it is essentially to be able to. The world is coming. The world is a global village at the moment, and it is looking at, countries are looking at giving a service that is sort of uniform, that is sort of human, if I may say. My brother here talked of some of the schools that you realize structures are in such a sorry state, dilapidated state, where we have a classroom and the roofings are damaged. They don't even have sitting facilities. When it rains, floods all over around, blackboards are not even there. We're not even supposed to be talking of blackboards at such instances, because blackboards are supposed to be looked at things of the past. But ironically, we have in schools that still use provisional blackboards, if I may say. Get an iron sheet and put it on the wall, and maybe pick some few pieces of cassava to use them as chalk. So we are in a situation as a country where the government need to come in and ensure that the issues to do with the nature of education are given the highest priority. That is, he talked of the halls of residences. We have Livingstone, we have Lumumba, we have Micho, talk of Mary Stewart Complex, and all that. When you look at the state where they are now, they are actually fit to be, museums and stuff. These are things that government has not really put in the initiative. But I wouldn't want to blame the government as the entirety. You look at individuals sometimes that to whom resources to be able to refurnish and renovate some of those halls of residences do not actually use that money or those funds for such. So it's an issue of
how
do
you evaluate how the UPE and USE has performed? Because as it stands, our literacy rate is at around 77%. That Ugandans can now read and write, 77% of us. So how do you evaluate UPE and USE? Is it about time they needed a review, or do you think they are doing exactly what they were put there to do?
Yes, the UPE and USE, I would say, have the intention or the target of the government is not realized, I would say. But over the time, we realize that instead of a child being at home and with no education, and such provisional education available, and children are able to use them effectively, and then that's well. But where we have problems, some of the instances where we have classes really being in sorry states, sometimes the teachers choose not to teach simply because they have not been paid. They have families, they have responsibilities that they need to do. And
so, in other words, we have achieved the quantity, but not the quality.
Absolutely. The quantity is achieved, but the quality is still.
Still
but I would want still to come on the issue of how the government still has ensured that with the global forces coming in, we've seen the World Bank coming in to put in some donation to be able to pick up at least, because we know higher education is quite costly for some of the families that we know at times live below $1. That is, of course, abject poverty. But we have institutions such as Mackline that are partnered with big corporations like the MasterCard Foundation, Window Trust Uganda, and so on and so forth. That some of those families, at the end of the day, when the child manages, to swim through these government-provided educational support, at least the issues to do with the higher education, they are helped. They're provided that the child delivers and performs so well. Of course, that is an addition to the government scholarships that are already available on the platform.
All right.
Yes. So on a scale of 1 to 10 on the UPE and the USE schools, I would say the government is at 7.
Oh, 7. Fair enough. Isabella, as we take a short commercial break, let's just still on the issue of education. Let's evaluate access to education for the girl child, to be specific. We know that Uganda's education policy provides for a 1.5 additional point given to girl child. And I think that has worked, because as it stands, the population of Mackline University, 51% are actually female, compared to 49% who are the gents. So how do you rate access to education for particularly the girl child in Uganda?
Thank you.
Of course, cognizant of issues like gender-based violence, teenage pregnancies.
Yes. Access of the girl child to education in Uganda is mainly effective in the central regions. It's just mainly effective in some regions, but when we go to other regions like the north or some parts of the eastern, yes, the access to education by these ladies is on a low scale, because of so many reasons. Some of them are cultural beliefs. We still have those traditional beliefs in some of those regions that they can't waste their time on a lady to go to school, because first of all, they may get disappointments like pregnancies and all that. So most of the parents still that side are concentrating on males. I'll give an example. When I sat my examinations in Katakwi district, that's why I talk about it a lot, because I've seen a lot from there. And coming out amongst the beneficiaries of the district quota, I was among them. And were only 2 girls, the rest were boys. So you can see at some point, the people we studied with kept dropping out at some point, and they were not able to sit for examinations because of various reasons, because some of them got pregnant, others the families had to choose whether they sponsor the girl child or they let the gentleman go to school, because there were not enough funds to cater for the both of them. Yeah, so that's how some of them I dropped out, which is not a good thing. So I feel like the girl child access to education is highly effective in regions like the central region, because at Mackline University Business School, 70% students are female. Yeah.
70%?
Yes, 70% are female, and the 30% are male. So it shows that it's really effective in regions like this. But in other regions like the north, it is still on a low scale.
Yeah.
I feel like the government should do a little bit better in those regions to enable the girl child go to school. We have had associations, NGOs like Fawe coming in to put a hand and provide scholarships to some of these women to go to school. But still, that's not enough. We need the government to come in and help.
Yeah. Is the 1.5%, the 1.5 extra points, is it working? Has it lived up to its expectations?
Just like I explained, I don't think it is working in some regions. You can't tell me that among us, the 7 slots of a district, only 2 are female, meaning the 5 are male. Yeah, that's what happened during my time. 2 slots were for females, that was me and another female, and then the other 5 slots were for males. So it still shows that the females are underrepresented in this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yes. And I wanted to comment about what you asked him. We even went forward when we were talking about the education, the service delivery on education in Uganda. I feel like it's not about that. We are basing more on the quantity of educated people than the quality that we are giving out. Because coming from regions like Kochido, a person will be sponsored almost like by the whole village to go to the university and study. And at some point, yes, they'll get done with studying. Yes, but after studying, what next?
Yeah.
I feel like the quality of education in Uganda needs a service itself, because we cannot keep releasing millions of graduates every year after year, only for them to go back and sit at home like they were never educated. Yeah. Yes.
So perhaps I think we need to evaluate the quality.
Yes.
Should we get more hands-on, more practical skills into our curriculum?
Yes, we should. We should base on curriculum or on education systems that train people to be more of job creators than job seekers, because the education system in Uganda trains a lot of job seekers than job creators. Yes.
All right, let's take a short commercial break. At least we have talked about security, we have talked about education a bit. We shall wrap it up with Gady, then move towards healthcare and amongst others. Well, thank you for keeping it with us. See you shortly after this commercial break.
Are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
We'll be back from that short commercial break. Gady,
Yes.
access to education. The young people of Karamoja, what is the status right there, but also general access to education in the country? How is government performing in that regard?
Let me start. I will start first by commenting the quality of higher education before we even go far. You see, the white man came and gave us education system of remembering. We only remember what we study. They teach you this, then you go and cram, and you go back to your workplace, you remember, keep on remembering, like you're just in that manner. Then the very white man decided to bring for us factories and said, now let me give this ones who remember something to do so that they can, as they're working, they don't do the practical bit, they just think of, oh, I'm supposed to do this like this, then does it. So the education system is not really at its quality, where we get people who hands-on and people who know what they are really doing. There are very few. There are few ones, basically, you find someone has studied from out and came back with the knowledge. You see, even the professors that are in universities, they have always studied from out, they come back, they have the knowledge. You see, they have got that feeling of having their hands-on system of education. Karamoja system of education, truly, before COVID, the locals were catching up, were catching up with going to school and, getting back to books, and even the insecurity wasn't there before lockdown. But when the lockdown came, it laid off very many students out of school, and most of this became idle, and they became idle and resorted into a cheaper source of making money, and that is through cattle rustling, stealing of animals. And when schools reopened, there was a high rate. People never went back to school. People dropped out of school because this returned everyone to the villages. So they looked for other sources of financing. So when they completely dropped out, and the enrollment after lockdown in Karamoja sub-region was so low. It happened both to the boys and the girls. The girls were highly affected. The issues of marriages, child marriages. Karamoja is this place where a lady is just carried, let me say, abducted or something like that by the fellow men, and they go and they marry her off by like forcefully. It's not something that they do it in a simple way. Like the way we do, you go date someone. No, there is, you either seek consent or you don't. You just go. You have admired the lady, you go with the lady. So that really affected even these girls who had gone to school and they went back to the villages. School was keeping them out. So there was a high rate of school dropout when they opened the schools after the COVID lockdown. So right now, we have people who have studied, who know English in the villages. Those are literates. But yet, they have not gone far in their education. They have remained at a level.
They have no skill.
They have no skill. They don't know anything. but all they know is that how can I survive in the village here? And that is what is bringing a rise in issues of insecurity in a Karamoja sub-region, because most people have gone to school, but they dropped out in the middle, and they have failed to go back to school. And also the high poverty rates in Karamoja sub-region. You find the highest percentage of Karamoja sub-region is really remote. Not all places are developed, and a few people have gone to school, and a few people are wealthy, and a few parents know that we should take our children to school. So the high poverty rate amongst the population has really affected most of these students from going to school. That's why we keep on telling the government, is there a possibility of bringing a free education system or a free scholarship for Karamoja-based students to come and study in these other developed areas, and also learn from these other developed areas and take the knowledge back to other people, instead of them just staying in the same area and consuming the same education. And when they go back to the village, they are associated with other people. And when they associate with those people give them the mentality and say, why do you have to stay in school when I can make money to look at your rates? So you find they drop out of school because of the peer influence. So the government should really do a robust back-to-school campaign and provide a cheaper or a free education for all the Karamoja children and other people.
Well, I'm sure those Karamojongs must be very proud of you. You're here trying to amplify their voices. Mwanje, as we shift gears to the economy, how has our government dealt with the economy of this country? Well, knowing that we have had a point in time when prices of commodities went high, prices of fuel, which could attach to maybe the Russia-Ukraine crisis, you will tell us, but also our approach towards debt refinancing. Our debt burden as it stands now is at 17 trillion, all right? I think about a month ago, Parliament approved another 1.7 trillion debt that we got from Standard Chartered Bank. So how has Uganda approached the economic status of this country? I know there is the parish development model, but I don't know, does that offer a solution to the very dying and desperate economic situation that exists in this country?
Thank you, Moses. The issue of the economy is really a huge one. For example, when you talk about the debt, that can be another, big thing to really tackle when you talk about the parish development model, because I think the PDM is simply there to develop people. But then, so I really intend to, go through it. But first and foremost, let me talk about the debt. Like I mentioned when I was starting, and I told you that the best way to do an evaluation is really actually when we address the issue of accountability. One of the biggest failures, one of the biggest blows of this government is the issue of accountability and the independence of government institutions. Whenever you deal with situations of lack of independence of government institutions that really leads into lack of accountability, then you can't avoid the issues that we keep lingering into every now and then, especially when it comes to our, debt and the way we actually pay this debt. So we have really failed into the debt, and it is really accumulating every now and then, simply because we have failed at accountability. Because we borrow this money, the money comes, of course, when it is passing through Parliament, there is a certain, issue it is supposed to handle, but when actually the money gets into our hands, that is where that is where the devil in us gets on the rise. That's where the devil gets on the rise, once the money is in our pockets. Because we now get into issues of accountability, we get into issues of where did the money go, did it do what it was actually supposed to do. Because if this money was doing what it was actually supposed to do, then there would be a better way of how we of how we pay this money. But because the money does not do what it's supposed to do, then we get up into these issues. I have talked about the issue of the classified budget. This is a budget that not even the members of parliament can vividly explain what it does. But it consumes over 7 billion on our budget every now and then. And then why won't the debt rise? Because we have things that we can't even account for. So our accountability in this country is really very, very, very poor. When you go into the issues of health, the minister here, we all saw on the media, the minister Msenero was being crucified, broad daylight in parliament over issues of accountability. So our debt is accumulating because we have failed at the issue of accountability. The same way the parish model may end up getting to that level, because it is not the parish model that is going to be our Jesus. No, we have had several of those. We have had the youth livelihood, we have had the operation wealth creation, but an evaluation needs to come in. Why have these now failed? And to me, I think because we lack accountability and we lack the independence of institutions. And I insist on that, the independence of institutions. Because if you don't build institutions that are independent, then somehow, somewhere, you birth corruption. You birth corruption. And countries that have managed to actually raise their democracies, they have only thrived on building institutions that are independent. For example, when we say that we have a committee called COSASE, does it have the mandate power? When we have the IGG, is she really independent to the extent that the office of the IGG is in position to question the office of the Prime Minister over how they have accumulated their wealth, over how they use the money? You get the idea. So if we can't build independent institutions that are accountable, then we have a huge debt accumulating every now and then. And our economy will keep on, declining. And that I don't need to be a prophet of doom to say the same. The economy will keep on declining because we have failed on building independent institutions that can be accountable.
James, the economy, our debt burden is very high, but also when you look at the level of unemployment, continues because you have a very large unproductive mass of this country. And by this I mean the young people who spend, first of all, so much time in school. Therefore, in the larger part of their youthful days, they are not productive. They are not involved in any productive activities that is maybe generating revenue for the country. So just as we evaluate the government's response towards the economic situation, do you think that as the citizens we have also fallen short of our responsibilities? For example, you look at, because as citizens we have a responsibility, which is to pay taxes, right? So, but you look at our tax compliance as a people is still very wanting. You look at issues around illicit financing. I don't know. For example, do you pay taxes?
Definitely, yes.
You pay your taxes.
Yes.
But how many Ugandans out there are avoiding taxes? So how do you expect the government to deal with the economic situation? How do you expect government not to borrow if we cannot realize resources domestically? So I don't know, where is the gray area? How can we support government as a citizenry? How can we realize utmost domestic resource mobilization? Do you think that there are too many incentives being given out to investors? For example, I know that BIDCO has a 10 years incentivized tax holiday, where for 25 years, they are tax exempted. So our economic policy, how best do we proceed? Because we need resources, but how can we realize them domestically before we think of borrowing?
Yes, thank you. So again, this brings us to the realization of how prepared the citizenry when to come to what they can inject into the economy. We talked previously about the education, the USE and the UPE not being sufficient in a way that what they produce is not up to standard. the issues to do with tax compliance and all that is a question of what the society sees around, that there are individual corrupt government officials who do not at times appropriate the funds that are meant for those particular instances that the government is putting in efforts. So corruption has become an issue that is making the public and the citizens more adamant to paying taxes when it comes to that moment. The youth is still being unproductive in the unemployment, or in the employment world, is broadly informed by the fact that they are not so much prepared. We look at some of the schools really that bring up these young people. When you go to some of those villages where even the laboratory is not equipped with some of the practicals. We know of some schools that I may not mention that have their students do some practical experience 1 week to the unit or to the examination. So you realize that, just like we've said earlier, that the youth are not prepared. And so when they come out of the institutions of learning, there's nothing much that they can be able to put into the economy. They become very redundant. They become, even when it comes to issues surrounding critical thinking, they can't, and they can't deliver. Whereas you also realize that citizens are supposed to be socially responsible. The taxes that usually are put forth by the government in doing all these social service infrastructure and all that, this is where these funds should be geared to. However, the citizens become suspicious if what the taxes that they are meant to pay is not actually showing, is not mirroring the effort. So I have a right, or I may be right in my own way. The next time a URA official actually come on, maybe to give me, to tell me to actually pay taxes that are in this specific period of time, because they don't essentially see any, they don't see any benefit. They don't see any reason as to why they will do that. So the economy, essentially, as we would say, is being affected by trust. That's one, by lack of commitment, and then also by the government doing up the follow-up, that when there's a budget allocated for a certain task and for a certain maybe endeavor or operation, apart from just putting that pool of resources there, does the government take the initiative to ensure that those funds that are meant for that particular task reach and are utilized to the maximization of that particular program? Evaluation of programs that the government put forth usually is lagging. That's why we've seen quite a number of initiatives that have been put forth. But again, they are not doing the intended, they are not actually achieving and realizing the intended purpose for which they were actually put forth. So it is the mode of the service delivery that is a problem. But I do believe the government is trying its level best to ensure that the economy stand tall and still is not affected by all these global forces. You look at Ukraine and Russia war that has touched almost every aspect of the economy. Students here would actually attest to the fact that 2 years ago and now, the levels of survivals have quite a little bit infringe on them. Look at the halls of residences. You look at some of the hostels that, to be able to respond to the global forces that are taking shape now, they have to a little bit increase on the price and all that. The price of bread as we speak now is not as it was a year or two. Look at sugar. So those basic needs really does inform where our economy is. If we say we have families that live below $1 per day, and then a kilo of sugar is approximately 5,000 Ugandan shilling, and someone has a salary of, let's say, 50,000 per month, yes. So you look at that, all that gap.
Yeah, we can say it's appalling.
It's a problem, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you, James. Isabella, let me just speak your opinion still on the economy. I don't know, how is our response as a country towards trying to cushion an economy that was that almost went into depression because of COVID-19? You know that during COVID-19, Ugandans were barely working, all right? So getting out of COVID-19, we would have expected government to maybe have programs tailored towards trying to reinstate or trying to rejuvenate the businesses that almost collapsed. But also, as you comment about the economy, could you shed for us a light around youth in business? All right, are the policies around, for example, getting your business registered? Are the policies around there too bureaucratic? Do they encourage entrepreneurship, or do they frustrate entrepreneurship? So, your comments on that.
Okay, thank you. The economy in Uganda is in a state where it is affecting people differently. I hope you know what I'm saying, because there are different groups of people in Uganda. So there are those ones who are really affected by the economy, and there are those who are not. For example, I'll give an example in that when the fuel prices went up, or let me say, in case the fuel prices went up to 10K per liter, let me say, there are groups of people in Uganda who will still fuel like a full tank and not even be bothered about it. And we can say these are the very people who are in position to like, they are the ones in government positions, they are the ones who are the other people are looking up to enable or to come up with solutions to the state of the economy in Uganda. But these are the very people who are not even affected at all by what? By the economy. So the people who are highly affected, let me say, they don't really have a say. They don't really have maybe someone to help them say something about the effects of the economy right now. Yeah, because these very people are not even bothered. First of all, they can afford it. They can afford the economy, even though we woke up in the morning and prices of sugar were high, prices of other commodities were high. Some people would still afford to buy what they need and even more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me comment about youth startup or business startup in Uganda. It's not really easy because I'm one of those people who have come up with ideas and started something. The policies are still the same. They don't put a place where they say, since you're a youth, let's be lenient, or let's do this, or let's, you know, it's just still the same thing. It's the same thing. You have to incur the same cost as someone else who is not a youth. So this has discouraged many youth. First of all, the startup capital is also a problem. So even registering the business is a problem. So you have to think of all these things. And at some point, even the businesses that are being started up by the youth are not like businesses that will, in a long run, be earning enough. They are just survival businesses. In that, at some point, you may just stop surviving. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. You may just stop surviving if the conditions are rough. It's not guaranteed that if in the long run something happens or the economy worsens, you will survive. So the businesses that the youth start up are not some of the things we shall see in the future. They are short term.
They're not seeing their first birthday.
Oh, they may see their first birthday, but at some point, it may end before the cake is cut.
I know.
Yeah.
All right, Gady, still about the economy. As we just try to wrap up the whole economic question, is that the NRM government ran its most recent general election on the promise of reviving the economy. And I think that is why the parish development model was a key program in government's agenda. So can Ugandans see the PDM as the silver bullet towards the economic question? Because she mentioned issues around access to capital. The PDM is taking money to the lowest level, which is the parish. So do we expect that the PDM will address the issues of access to capital for young people, but also what systems have been put there to capture the fears of Mwanje, the issues around corruption, issues around misuse of public funds? So are there stringent mechanisms in place to ensure that this money will not be misused, but also there'll be access to capital for these young people?
Okay. Thank you, Moses, for that question. You see, corruption is one thing that it has lived in Uganda for quite a long period of time, and we have sung about, we have put policies against corruption, we are trying to fight it, and it has still remained as it is, it has not changed. And people be arrested and released, and they come back to the same situation that they were in earlier on. So corruption is really at the center of our economy failing. I can recall what he said. He talked about the independence of most of our government entities. But sometimes I cannot call it independence, but I can call it corruption of our government entities. Because if IGG goes to investigate on the OPM money, you find there is bribery and other things that occur inside. So the institute itself is independent on its own to do its mandate, but the corruption that is there is failing it from doing its mandate as it's supposed to. So corruption is the one eating our government entities. Come to the PDM. The government brought a Myoga to help the locals, and basically to try to give them startup capital so that they can help themselves to feed, to clothe themselves, to feed themselves, and to live to see another day. But then the experience that came in was so appalling, where you find that this money, which was given through Myoga, was being mishandled. It started from the very people who are distributing, from the very government officials. It was first mishandled from there. When it went to the local communities, it was again mishandled from there. And now even most of the government officials were forming their own groups in the villages, and later on use them as, puppets. They get money, then you go and get the money from them and go and do your things. So it was all a messed up system, where I don't believe where the government is going to recover that money that was given through Myoga. So the PDM has been brought to help solve most of those issues. That's why it has a lot of pillars that are governing it. So the PDM has been brought to really try to bring it, that's why it is being taken to the parish, to try to reach to the common person in the parish, try to reach the common person in the village. How can we bring up, how can we start up the economy right from the village? Not from the people who are already in town. How can we start it up from the village so that these people can have a base of survival, and also the country can harness something from them through some of the taxes that are going to be levied through them. So the government has released money to them, but the guidelines that are towards that money is the one protecting it from. You've seen very many cows are being arrested because of this money. So that means the government is trying to protect it from being stolen, misuse by our corrupt officials in most of the local governments. So government is really trying its best to make sure that the local person comes up. The local person gets some startup capital. The local person gets some money to rise up. And when that person has developed, the economy can start right from the village and grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is
All right.
basically.
All right, fair enough. You've made a very good case for the PDM. Mwanje, as we just try to bring this conversation to an end, government has a responsibility to protect the rights of citizens. Their fundamental rights, I think Article 44 provides for them, but also there are other rights that Ugandans must enjoy. Now, as we evaluate government's performance towards service delivery, how has government performed in terms of protecting the rights of Ugandans? And in this, I mean human rights. Perhaps we could talk about the issues around torture, issues around political rights, if you may wish. All right. So the rights of Ugandans, has government done justice in terms of protecting those rights?
Thank you, Moses. One, the political space in this country is suffocated. I live in this country and I say it without fear of contradiction. The political space is suffocated. Recent of all everything is what happened at the alma mater. See, that was suffocation of the political space. That the thing is now eating from the top, it is now getting to university institutions, and I think the political space in its sense is suffocated. From the suffocation of the political space is the political expression in this country is also suffocated to me. You cannot really express yourself politically. And this has not even spared the non-politicians. See, every now and then, these abductions that are happening, you realize these are normal wananchis that are only expressing their political interests. So I think these are issues that rise with the insecurity, the political insecurity in this country, and I see a very huge political insecurity in this country. As much as the government has really played its role, it has done all that he has done, there's a lot of political insecurity lingering in this country, and that has suffocated. Because why would we go into an election, but first, social media is switched off? I don't know which explanation is there to switch off social media if that is not political suffocation. Two, there is a saying on social media platforms, it's called the track. If you have heard of that saying. So people say, I have seen the track in Kololo. And they are meaning those big, vehicles full of ammunition and full of guns. You see, but then you want people to go into an election, they vote for who they want freely. So that is political suffocation. So when it comes to the issue of the political space, it's really suffocated. The human rights violations in this country, I think we are also lacking in the human rights of this country. And I think partly of our failure is what I mentioned, the independence of institutions. And you see, I think Gady has picked it from another sense of direction. My direction is not in you being able to do your work. I might let you do your work, but you're doing it on my tentacles. And that's where I'm coming from. That in you being able to do your work of inspection as the office of the IGG, are you able to do it independently, come up with a report, and take an action depending on your report? I think that is lacking in this country, unless someone lives somewhere else. But that is lacking in this country because these reports have been published every now and then. Security reports, health reports, ABCD reports, they have been published. But then the follow-up fails because there is lack of independence of the entities that are supposed to follow up. Somehow, somewhere, it goes to the tentacles of maybe a body, maybe a person. I am a wananchi, I don't know where it goes, but I see it goes somewhere. So that's where the human rights has also ended up getting suffocated. That the entities that are supposed to deal with the human rights, they come up with a report, they actually have to do ABCD, but because somehow, somewhere, Gady talked of some bodies that are out of the constitution, because a certain body that is out of the constitution says A, then that is what is supposed to be done. For example, what explains the abduction of Ewan Joseph Kabuleta from his office by men who are not even in uniform, if that is not a violation of human rights and suffocation of political space? What explains that? So you see that, and these are continuously happening. They are even on camera without any fear. So to me, the human rights and everything is leading to suffocation. It is leading to suffocation.
All right, that is his opinion, Gady. The issue of human rights. And because, like I mentioned earlier on, government has a responsibility to its citizens to protect their rights. So as we just wrap this conversation up in the next 5 minutes, how do you evaluate government's performance towards protecting the rights of Ugandans? Well, knowing that there are those who are incarcerated and have never appeared before court. There are those who are allegedly held incommunicado. There are those who, because like I told you earlier on, the Right Honorable Mathias Mpuga, I think 2 weeks ago, did present a list of missing persons. So the issue of human rights is very important. How is government performing?
Okay, Moses, I'm going to tackle that in 2 ways. There is this violation of human rights during election period. Then there are other crimes that people commit within the society, and human rights comes in. So let me start by these other crimes people commit around the society, and human rights sets in. Human rights has really helped most of the societies in Uganda. I can talk about my place where I come from, Karamoja, because most families find they have been threatened by gun violence from our other local members like cattle raiders or other criminals around the society. So human rights has really set in to really help most of these families be heard from different security agencies. So human rights has come even from issues of torture. When police does something wrong, human rights has come in. That's when I can say it from the experience in Karamoja sub-region. But then there are issues that human rights has not helped. I cannot say they're 100%. They're not 100%. They have not done their work 100%, because there are issues that have come up from the abductions, from the recent elections that happened in Uganda. Most people were beaten. Most people, some families, most people have been abducted and they have not been found up to now. Most people have been abducted and tortured. So you realize by the fact that they have failed, they have not done their best. I cannot say failing. I don't know whether it's really failing or something, but they have not done their best to make sure that these people's pleas are heard. These people's cries are heard. All their issues are brought into book, are brought into check. So you realize that on the issue of the political aspect, there is a way human rights has been infiltrated in Uganda. It has been infiltrated in one way or the other.
Right.
So it affects the persons that are affected. Really.
All right, just let me pick the 2 comments from Isabella. The issue of human rights.
The issue of human rights in Uganda, I will mainly comment about the political aspect. Recently, there was one of the authors who was arrested, and together with his team were tortured because of they were expressing themselves. He's an author who wrote a book called The Komanyoko Politics of Uganda.
The what?
Komanyoko Politics of Uganda. Yes, so when he was going to launch his book, so he was captured together with his team before he could launch it, and taken to prison and arrested, and tortured. And, you know, whenever he claims that whenever they would try to say something, the more you say anything, the more slaps you get. Yeah, that's a violation of our right to speech. I believe that Ugandans should be given a right to speak, freedom of speech. And that's a violation of human rights if they are not allowed to express themselves. And I think that is one of the ways that the government is lagging behind. The political aspect is really crucial in this country because a lot of people are not allowed to express themselves. They are not allowed to say when something goes wrong. Also, the situation in universities or higher institutions of learning whereby political figures, those big political figures are penetrating the boundaries of the institutions and injecting political ideas into the youth, the student youth. One time I was invited to a radio station where I was talking about this issue. Let the students be students. I don't think the political figures have a right to inject their ideas or force their ideas onto students, which has gotten most of them into trouble, most especially the students that are involved in violence on behalf of these political parties. We were of a point of view that let students be students, let them have their rights as students and express their views politically without being infiltrated by these outside forces. Yes, let them have student parties. Let's not have political parties coming and putting ideas onto
You're
students.
saying that education institutions should be divorced from political parties?
Yes, because it has caused a lot of violence. Some of the students have been injected with ideas that are not befitting of students. They end up committing, they're energetic. They take advantage of youth because youth are energetic and they have nothing to lose. And they want to be like those other people outside there. So they take advantage of them and inject them with ideas that could lead even to violence. For example, what happened at Mackline University. Yeah.
Thank you. James, our time is fast spent. I will give you just 2 minutes to give us your comments on the issue of rights.
Okay. Yes, human rights, just as it is what the globe is actually heading towards to now. Whereas we see Uganda coming in as one of those signatories of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The government, of course, has really done so much on that field, and where we see there is freedom of expression that is happening. I think the Constitution is very bold and solid on that. Of course, we see the media houses now hosting programs that sometimes anti-government, youth come and give their views regarding where they feel government officials have failed or probably have achieved in given areas. That is one aspect. Whereas also someone will talk about the prevailing circumstances of, we see social media, Facebook in particular, being non-operational in Uganda. Right now, you can only access Facebook using the virtual private network. That's the VPN. Of course, there are so many arguments surrounding that area that there is need to protect individuals or to protect citizens over cyber harassment and all those sexual predators and so on and so forth. That is just another argument. You've also seen government coming in to counter the issues of the FGM, that's the female genital mutilation, that some of those cultural practices, whereas we, the African traditionals, those who believe in the African traditional ways of life. It is every society has a spring from which it actually emerges from. But also on the human rights sense of it, you realize that some practices are quite dangerous to human beings. Some of these practices of the female genital mutilation do not actually see, there is no consent that is taken from individuals to whom it is practiced on sometimes. But this is an area that the government has taken initiative in ensuring that such kinds of diabolic cultural practices are put to an end. Whereas, of course, they are conflicting now with the traditional leaders that there is a problem here. Look, our society or our community has a base from which it actually came up from. So it is of no significance actually stopping us from there.
There is actually a court decision that declared that particular practice unconstitutional. So I think government is doing well in that regard. Colleagues, thank you very much. Our time is fast spent. So I'll give you all 30 seconds. Please use not more than that. Just to give us your last words, but also which country do you think will win the World Cup? So Gady, 30 seconds as I move towards that side.
Okay, thank you so much, Kidega. I want really to thank everyone for the words of encouragement, and I really call upon government to think of the locals and think of the citizens of the country, make sure that we are safe and sound to stay in a country which is peaceful. So I call upon government to improve on the security and, of course, try to bring people to work together. And the country that is going to win World Cup, nonetheless, France.
France, okay. Yeah. Mwanje, your last words in 30 seconds.
Thank you, viewers. Thank you for watching us, and I encourage all of us to really follow these government programs and always have our input into them. I think, though Morocco tried to deviate away from Africa, but let's support it and see if it comes up with the thing. So let it be Morocco.
Morocco, France, Morocco. Yes, James.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, viewers out there, and to our host for giving us this opportunity to be able to share our perspectives. I would encourage the youth to ensure that they take up most of this initiative that the government is toiling on, and also keeping it at the back of their minds that the government is not going to do everything for you. We need to be quite a little creative in these postmodern era that we're in. We need to take up the ventures that come up. We need to think beyond the classroom knowledge that we get. We need to embrace agriculture because that is the way forward. When you look at most of these countries that have, of course, at the ceiling, they tend to so much optimize on the agriculture and then the creative innovations of the youth. Yes.
The World Cup team?
But the World Cup team, yes. I would go with the France because you're seeing most of our African
Union.
African Union, absolutely.
Yes, Isabella.
Thank you so much. I will not entirely say that the government has not done its part, because there are aspects in the country that the government has handled quite well, even though there's still room for improvement. But I would also like to caution the citizens that while the government is minding our business, we should also make sure that we are helping them. We should not just sit back and just cry and call upon the government to do everything for us. We should also, find ways of helping them achieve these goals.
Your World Cup team?
I'm not really into football, but I just have a warning for those who are betting. Make sure you bet properly, because if something goes wrong, you'll stop betting by force.
All right. Thank you very much, Comrade James, Comrade Mwanje, Comrade Mackline, and Comrade Gady for spending the time to be on this episode of the Youth Roundtable. Well, you've had it all. We wish you a lovely festive season. Be security vigilant. It's a very tricky part of the year. Everyone is trying to, get something to go with. So just be security vigilant. And from me to you, we say have a lovely afternoon and see you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.
Bye.